All right, so we are going to first take a look at some of the games that we were not able to get to. More importantly, the trends that I was not able to get to on the college football show on this report. So we're going to wrap up first of all what we talked about on college football for our Week 7 preview show. Then we're going to include the beginning of our NFL coverage on these reports. Um, been kind of doing it on purpose. I think I mentioned this last year that I wanted to wait for at least a month before we started to handicap some of our NFL action. And I think that's where not only you start to get a little bit better of an idea of what's happening, but also I think the handicapping information makes a little bit more sense once you're into October. So let's first of all wrap up college football. I'm just going to go over and make sure um, if there were any specific uh, trends that I did not talk about in the first one. So let's go ahead and go through that. In the Big Ten, Michigan State's at Rutgers. Rutgers is 4-0-1 against the spread this year, so I do like them in this spot. Uh, Michigan State's playing with an interim coach, Greg Schiano, obviously, and the coaching staff is in a much better position. This is a huge game for Rutgers. If they lose this game, they're in big trouble as far as being able to attain 6 for bowl eligibility. But most importantly, Michigan State will be playing Michigan next week, and they're 0-8 against the spread with rest versus Big Ten teams off a straight up loss. Uh, I am also taking the Illinois Maryland game. Matter of fact, I'm going to post up the picks here one more time, just so you can take a look at what we're going with. Here are the picks. No, wait, no, those are the NFL picks. Let's move off the NFL first. I'm going to pop up the college football picks. So here they are. So you can take a look at them again. And we'll go back now to the regular screen. So Maryland is a 14-point favorite against Illinois. Illinois 0-6 against the spread on the season. Let's talk about the ACC. We definitely talked a lot about what was going on there in that conference. Matter of fact, I don't have anything else to add in the ACC. So let's go to the Big 12. I mentioned that I'm taking Iowa State because of Matt Campbell's record. 27-11 against the spread as a Big 12 dog. Also, Iowa State 12-1 against the spread versus 500 or less opponents off a straight up ATS loss. And Cincinnati 0-2 straight up and against the spread as a favorite this season. BYU TCU. I mentioned why I like BYU in this one. One of the other trends I did not add. BYU is 10-2 against the spread as dogs of 6 or less off a straight up win. Moving over now to the Pac 12. And, I was really close to taking Stanford. I just have this feeling about tonight's game. I don't. Will Stanford upset Colorado? I got a feeling about it. We're 330 money line play, but and look, Stanford actually played Arizona really tough a few weeks ago, and I didn't think that was possible, but they did because they really don't have a whole lot going on right now. This is a big rebuilding job going on there. Plus, Stanford is 2-10 against the spread. Their last 12 is a road dog, 0-1 in that spot this year. Colorado has beaten Stanford 3 straight up and against the spread, dating back to 2016. So yeah, I just can't take Stanford, and they're also 1-7 against the spread after a bye. Um, but there was just something sort of like Stanford and Arkansas. Those are like the two upsets that I was like, I don't know. I just got a feeling about it, but I backed away from both of them. California and Utah talked about Utah's strong record at home against the spread. Also talked about Cal's record. Another one I wanted to throw in there. Utah has covered 9 straight as a home favorite of less than 18 when they take on a greater than 400 opponent off a straight up loss. Moving on over to the. Actually, there's also in the Pac 12 that Arizona Washington State matchup. Did not mention this, but Arizona, as you should probably know, 0-3 straight up, but 3-0 against the spread as dogs this year. And 2 of those were overtime losses. And again, that's the reason why I'm sticking with the points 8 as opposed to going with the outright money line at 260. It's not to say I'm not going to put some money on the money line, but I feel better with the 8, especially with my system. And on the other side, though, if you like Washington State, we've talked about how good they are at home this year, and they looked awfully impressive before that trip to UCLA last week. But they've covered 9 straight as a home favorite of less than 18 versus an opponent of back-to-back straight-up losses. Let's move on over to the group of 5, and this is really where I have a lot more trends that I wanted to get to. Let's talk about one of the upset plays I'm going with, the single-digit upset, Temple against North Texas. And that's because really no major trends here. Matter of fact, the one trend is bad. Temple's 0-5 against the spread. But that's because people thought, like I did, that they were going to be better this year, that they were heading in the direction. E.G. Warner's second-year quarterback. But the problem is they face a tough schedule. So they've lost to an ACC team, a Big Ten team. They've lost at Tulsa, which is better than people thought they were going to be this year, and that was on the road. And they lost at home to UTSA. So really, I mean, maybe the Tulsa game could have been an upset, but Temple's pretty much where they were going to be when you looked at the schedule. I'm not really too sold on North Texas anyway, but I just think Temple has something in them that they're finally maybe going to break out and get a couple of wins, and I think this might be a good spot for them. Navy and Charlotte. Navy has covered 6 out of the last 7 as a road favorite. Charlotte 1-8 against the spread as dogs of 15 or less since 2021. 0-1 in that spot this year. Charlotte has not beaten an FBS team this year, but they are 3-1 against the spread. And they have played a pretty tough schedule. So Charlotte could be a team to keep an eye on depending on what happens in the Navy game. But at this point, I'm sticking with Navy. In the other game that we did talk about, FAU and USF, it is homecoming, by the way, for the Bulls. 4-16 straight up, but 15-3 against the spread off a straight-up ATS loss. So anytime the Bulls are off a straight-up ATS loss, they haven't won many games, just 4 out of the last 20, but they have covered 15 of the last 18. Not sure why that number is what it is. It's off by a couple of points, but could just be because of probably, you know what? It could be because they were taking on FCS teams, which is even worse, which says that the straight up record is probably even worse against FBS teams. But anyway, also consider this. South Florida was a favorite for the first time last week against UAB this season. Didn't handle it very well. They're a favorite again. And FAU 15-1 against the spread as dogs of less than 23 when they take on a 600 or greater opponent off a straight-up loss. I'm not even sure. Does that cover South Florida? Double check if that does cover South Florida. Because I'm not sure. Are they a 600 or greater opponent? No, they're not. Because they lost the UAB game. So that does not qualify. They're 3-3 South Florida. So disregard. No, actually, it does work. I said less than 600, not greater than. So, yes, that does work. FAU 15-1 against the spread is dogs of less than 23 versus less than 600 opponents off a straight-up loss. And they're 1-0 in that same trend this year. Let's move on over to the Mountain West. There's a bunch to talk about in the Mountain West. There's a game tonight between Fresno and Utah State, and I like Utah State in this one. If you take a look at it, you know, they're really starting to put up some points. Their offense has done pretty well, and their starting quarterback is playing this week because he's been in and out a little bit. But they're 23rd in total offense overall, Utah State is. And they had 63 points in the game last week. Head coach Blake Anderson, 16-4 straight up and against the spread in conference games after a win of more than 17. So that's the spot they're in. And they've played a pretty tough schedule. You know, they've lost to Iowa, Air Force, and James Madison. So those are some pretty tough teams for Utah State. Fresno State's biggest win is Purdue. They have not played a tough schedule. They did lose to Wyoming last week. 0-11, the Bulldogs against the spread as a road favorite of more than 3 off a straight-up ATS loss. It's still more than 3. I like Utah State. We talked a little bit about UNLV and Nevada. I just want to elaborate more on this. They've got this quarterback, Jaden Mava. He's a young kid, and he took over the job from the number one guy, and Brumfield. And I don't think he's giving it back because the kid's back and he's holding on to the job as well. He should. He's been. We talked about the points that they put up recently. Um, I do worry a little bit that you're giving up 9.5 in this spot, but they've covered 7 straight off a double-digit ATS win, 1-0 in that spot this year. Nevada's only win on the season. No, excuse me. Nevada has not won this year. Okay, they're they're 0-5, and they also lost to their FCS opponent. Good FCS team, Idaho, but still, you lost to the FCS team. That's not good. That's why they're on a 15-game losing streak. The thing, though, that probably is the a worrisome thing for me is just the fact that Nevada has played better lately. They've covered 3 straight games. They led North Texas, I think it was, no, Texas State, like huge at halftime a couple weeks ago, but then got crushed in the second half. So they have been more competitive lately. So we'll see what goes on here, but I'm behind everything that's going on with UNLV, and I'm just going to keep riding them until they lose, or until they maybe lose some momentum with their spread, with their covering games this year. San Jose State, New Mexico. Now, I wanted to talk about a couple of these games here. I mentioned the schedule situation with Wyoming and Air Force. Let's talk about that with a couple of these other 2 games. San Jose State, New Mexico. San Jose State's schedule: USC, Oregon State, Toledo, Boise State, and Air Force. I mean, that's like the toughest schedule in college football. So they're 1-5 to start the season. They probably looked at the schedule before the season began and thought, we might be 1-5. So they know how important now. And you might say, yeah, but anybody can be 1-5. That doesn't mean they're any good. Well, keep this in mind. Against Toledo, they were up 17-7 in the third quarter. Against Air Force, they were up 20-10 in the second quarter. And against Boise, they were up 27-7 in the second quarter. So they obviously have talent. They just haven't been able to finish these better teams. Now they're playing an inferior team in New Mexico. Now, keep an eye on the true freshman quarterback, Devin Dampier. Okay, he had a nice couple of series last week in the loss a couple weeks ago in the loss to Wyoming, and he's going to be maybe the guy now. It's very possible this might be it. He might be taking over now, but he is a freshman, and you got to keep that in mind. So there's going to be some erratic things going on there. New Mexico is 1-6-1 against the spread. Their last 8 is a home dog. And they're 0-7 against the spread. Their last 7 with rest. So they're coming off a bye. And they've lost 13 straight Mountain West Conference games. So that's why I'll take San Jose State minus the 8. The 8 is the troubling thing. Like, I feel kind of good about San Jose State winning the game. And then we talk about the other matchup regarding schedules. San Diego State at Hawaii. They're a 6-point favorite at Hawaii. Definitely like San Diego State in this one. Now, the only negative is the recent trends against each other. They have won 3 straight against Hawaii, the Aztecs have, but the last 2 years by only 9 total points. So that's not good if you're taking the Aztecs. Take a look at the schedule. They've lost 4 straight. Not good, but Oregon State, UCLA, Air Force, and Boise State, just kind of like San Jose State's schedule. So that's a good thing, though, if you're taking them this week. Hawaii, meanwhile, they're 2 wins this year. FCS opponent and a comeback against New Mexico State. Okay? Now, Hawaii has lost 4 games this year by a total of 89 points. Okay, so if they lose big. And their last 2 losses have been by 69 points. So I'm with San Diego State minus the 6. They're coming off a bye. Same situation, maybe like San Jose State. Hey, the season's not over. Our schedule opens up, that kind of thing. And San Diego State 10-1 against the spread with rest off back-to-back straight-up losses. Let's talk about the Sun Belt. And I did want to talk about Marshall and Georgia State. Conflicting trends. I'm staying away from this one. This one's just too tough for me to call. Georgia State's a 1-point favorite. Really good matchup here. Whoever wins is still in the race whoever loses is in trouble. This is a stretch, a start of a very tough stretch for both programs. And this is going to be a very tough race to the conference championship this year. This is going to be a good Sun Belt championship this year. Marshall, 7-1-1 against the spread as dogs off a straight up non-conference loss. Georgia State, you do like them though, because Marshall has some conflicting trends, as I mentioned. That's the good one. The bad one is, actually, there are two bad ones. Marshall is 2-11 against the spread when they take on an opponent off a bye, and 1-8 against the spread in the second of back-to-back road games. Georgia State was a 1-point favorite versus Troy not too long ago, about a week ago, and they lost that game. I'm staying away from the game, like I said, though. And in the MAC, Kent State will be playing their fifth road game in 7 weeks when they're at Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan, they're 8.5-point favorite in that one. Miami and Western Michigan. I said I was going to talk more about this one. So, Miami's done a really good job this year. After the loss to Miami to start the season, they're 5-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread. They upset Cincinnati, too. So, that's huge. And Chuck Martin might have one of his better teams. Okay, next two opponents, Toledo, Ohio. So it's starting to get really interesting. But I do like what Western Michigan's doing. Now, this might be too early. I might be jumping the gun. May not be the right time to take Western Michigan. But I'm going to roll that. That's why I'm getting close to 3-1 on the money line, and I'm going to roll the dice on them. I like this hire from Lance Taylor. I like what he's doing. They used multiple quarterbacks, 3 of them this year, and each guy's actually played well at times. Hayden Wolf had a huge game last week, the ODU transfer, in their loss against Mississippi State. Keep that in mind. They lost to an SEC team on the road by 13 points. That's pretty impressive. And they only were out yardage by 27. That's also impressive. And if you take a look at their schedule, now they've covered 3 straight after getting off to a slow start. They were bad last year. They got off to a bad start, and you're thinking, oh, this is just a bad program. But it is a new coach. It's going to take some time. Last 3 games, they've gotten better. They've covered the last 3. Now, keep this in mind. In the last 4 games that they played, Iowa, they trailed 14-10 at halftime on the road. Toledo, they led 31-28 in the fourth quarter. They then beat Ball State by 18 points and then had the 13-point loss on the road to Mississippi State. That's a pretty impressive run that they're on right now. And they've got a very young running back to keep an eye on, this kid named Jalen Buckley. So I talked about the quarterbacks, but Buckley has actually been the driving force offensively for them. And as I mentioned on the show, they've won 8 straight against Miami. 8 straight. And they've covered 12 out of 13 as MAC dogs of more than 3. And 1-0 in that spot this year. So if you want to take the points, you can do that. You're getting 8.5. I'm rolling the dice on the money line at plus 270. I'm also taking Akron as one of my double-digit upsets. And I'm doing that because they came through for me last year. And I think this might be a good time for them to come up with another one. Yes, they've lost 4 straight, but this is how it worked out. I mean, if you take a look at their season, they lose to Temple in the beginning of the year, where they led the game late. They should have won the game, and it got away from them late. They had a miracle win on a Joe Pisarcik scoop and score against FCS opponent. I think it was Morgan State. So maybe that would have flipped. They should have beat Temple. They should have lost to Morgan State. But they've lost 4 straight since then. They had the back-to-back overtime losses, and that's excruciating. For a program that is trying to build something, to lose back-to-back. And one of them was at Indiana. That was huge. Big Ten game. That's huge. They lose their number 1 quarterback, the kid DJ Irons, the Auburn recruit transfer. So they lose him, and they played Northern Illinois last year without him. They got blown out. This comes after the 2 overtime games. have to play with a new quarterback. You can imagine what happened. It was just it just worked out that way. No surprise they got blown out. That's why I think now, a week later, a little bit more focused into trying to play like more of the team that almost won 2 overtime games and almost upset Indiana. Now they're not going to. A lot of people thought they were going to go to the veteran pro style quarterback on the team, but they're going to go to the younger that fits more of the dual threat that Joe Moorhead wants. So we'll find out if that's the right call or not. Keep in mind, Central Michigan is 0-2 against the spread as a favorite this year, and they occurred in the last 2 games they played versus MAC teams. So you could take Akron at 13 if you want, but I am going to roll the dice on the money line there at plus 340. I mentioned the Ohio Northern Illinois game. I mentioned a couple of notes there. Ohio has won 5 straight. They've covered 4 straight. Don't forget they lost week 1 at San Diego State. They've been perfect since then. Ontario Brown for Northern Illinois, good young running back, had 280 yards on 13 carries and 4 touchdowns against Akron last week. But as I mentioned, Ohio is the 6th ranked rushing defense in college football. They've also covered 7 straight after Kent State, whatever that means, but it's a thing. The dog in the series, this is if you want Northern Illinois, has won 3 out of 4 and covered 4 straight. Now, this has happened since at least 2013. But more importantly, as I mentioned, Northern Illinois is just 6-19-1 in their last 26 at home and 1-9 against the spread off a double-digit ATS win. So I'm taking Ohio minus the 6 in that one. Okay, that's going to wrap up college football. And I might not even do that. Most of the time, hopefully I'll get all that in. But let's talk now NFL. See how I did that? And here are the picks. Okay. So, that's right. I got to go back. Let's get rid of the college football picks and let's put on the NFL picks. Okay. So there are the NFL picks. There's the formula. It's the same. And I changed it because I had a much smaller formula last year, but it was not working for me. And so I'm changing it. And what's also not working for me was, like I said, I thought it would be better if I would change things up, give me a little bit of time to figure things out in the beginning of the season, that kind of stuff. So I'm changing some things, and I think this is what you should do. That's my handicapping tip of the week. That's if I've always said this over the years, you have to have a formula. That's my formula. You see, my points formula. It's worked for me. Now it's weird. It's not working for me this year so far in college football. It's normally I do really well on the double-digit upsets and the upsets in general, which is why my record doesn't really matter as much. Because I can have less wins on my record, but if I hit those double-digit upsets, I'm making more money. And matter of fact, I can just let you know overall what my record is. I think I have it on the. Yeah, here it is. So my overall record in 5 years, I am about 80 games over 500, and this is like 1,400 games. My top picks are only 7 over 500. That's it. My additional picks are about 70 over 500. But my upset picks, 35 for 107, and the double-digit upsets are 50 out of 233, and they all add up. My total revenue in the 5 years with my system, if you did everything that I did with my points formula, 300 for the 5-star, 100 each on the money, everything that I have out there, you just did word for word everything I've done. In the last 5 years, you would have made $12,000. So last year we made over 3,000. And what was my record last year? This is college football. What was my record last year in college football? 2 games over 500. And I made over $3,000. Now you know why I say my formula or the way things are going this year a little bit weird. Even though now I'm actually my record is better. So I'm gonna I'm imagining it's going to work its way back as it always does, but we'll see how it goes. That's why I'm changing things in the NFL this year. We'll see if that works out. So I'm just gonna run quickly through the the trends. Now you might have noticed my only top pick. I have no 5-star this week. I have no 4-star. Because my 5-star, I mentioned this on the college football show with Mark, was San Francisco earlier this week in the contest, and they were given 4.5. I think I had to give, but there's no way I'm giving 10. So that's off the board. But my other pick was Jacksonville. That was my second pick. So now I took Jacksonville as one of my better plays in the contest as well. That was, I think, might have been my top contest play that first week of the season. Now it turns out I got lucky. Well, lucky's, it was just maybe not lucky is the word, but it could have gone the other way because Jacksonville scored late. Indianapolis was ready to backdoor, and they had the ball first and goal at the 5 or something, and they couldn't get in. And it was killing me because all they had to do was kick a field goal, go for the 2 points, and he wouldn't do it. So I was kind of getting screwed in a way, but it worked out. So I'm going right back to it, but that first game had nothing to do with it, because for the first time in 11, there was an 11-game series streak with Jacksonville and Indianapolis where the home team had won 11 straight in the series. So that's gone. It's now 11-1. That's still good enough for me. The point spread is 4, but the spread record is 8-3-1 in that mark. So again, it's still, if you just look at it without first game this year, you're looking at 11-1 straight up, 8-3-1 against the spread, the home team in the series. Like I said, that's good enough for me, especially since I took Jacksonville to break the covers in in the first game of the season. So it worked for me, and I'm going back with it here. Yes, you might look at Jacksonville's home record, not good, 0-2, straight up ATS. They had to go away to London to get good, but we know they were a good team coming in anyway. And now it's like that London trip, that was what they needed. I just find it difficult to believe that they're just going to revert back to what they were doing before London. And also Indianapolis. Now, you might say, well, do I want Minshew to start or Richardson? I mean, who do I want to start? I don't really care. That's just the way I'm going to look at it. Because I'm just also looking at the fact that Indianapolis is playing better than people thought this year. They're in the race. So this is an important game in the South. I just think Jacksonville's a better team. And if they are a better team, they'll win this game at home. But the other trend is working against them. Not only is Jacksonville 0-2 straight up ATS home this year, but the Colts are 2-0 straight up ATS away, both as dogs. But I'm taking that's why they're not a 5 or a 4-star. But they're my 3-star solely on the fact that I just think they're a better team. It's an important game. They're playing their best football of the year, and I think they'll take care of business with the Colts on Sunday. Now, I had a bunch of other games in there that were my additional picks. Before I move on with that, just want to throw out the San Francisco-Cleveland trends. The Browns are just 1-12 in their last 13 home dog situations. That's pretty bad. Versus teams that have their opponents that have a winning record or percentage of 600 or greater. Obviously, San Francisco's in that spot. This is not a good spot for Cleveland. One of the other games I have in there is Cincinnati, 3 over Seattle. Now, I like both of these teams. I took Seattle to be a playoff team this year. I took them to be, I definitely like them as a sleeper, as maybe a championship game sleeper, maybe even a Super Bowl sleeper. And they're starting to play that way now. They're 2-0 straight up ATS road, so that's good. They've won 3 straight up ATS. We know what has happened to the Bengals, but I know some people on the Playbook ATS show, which is at the Playbook Experts channel that we recorded, I forget who it was, but somebody said something of, yeah, but that was Arizona. Maybe they're right, but I don't look at it that way. I don't care about that. What I care is that it looked like Joe Burrow in the offense was finally doing something, because it doesn't matter who your opponent is. You just have to go out there and look, Tennessee, they don't have some great defense. So, it's like, all right, I mean, really, if they would have scored 13 or 16 against Tennessee, that would have been okay. All right, that happens. But when you score 3 points, it's the offense. And so They definitely looked a lot better. Jamar Chase was phenomenal, which is awesome for me because he's on my dynasty team, fantasy league. But here's a stat for you. Cincinnati is 17-5 straight up, 17-4-1 against the spread. Their last 22 non-division matchups, including 15-2 straight up in their last 17 versus winning teams. So that is a really good one for Cincinnati. And here's another one. They've covered 12 straight as non-division favorites of 3 or more off of an NFC game. That's a weird one, but it is 12 straight. And Seattle 1-10 against the spread off back-to-back straight-up wins. The last being by double digits, the blowout against the Giants, when they take on an opponent off a straight-up win. So I like the trends, but more importantly, I do think Cincinnati is now ready to start getting back to being the team we thought they were, sort of like Jacksonville. And Seattle, they can kind of afford a loss after winning 3 straight. This is not one of those games in the beginning of the season that you would, if you're a Seattle fan, you're like, all right, let's circle that one as a win. So they can still lose that one and be in a good situation because their next 2 games are at home against Arizona and Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland could be a much tougher opponent by then, but it all depends who the quarterback is. All right, another game I like, Houston. It was a 1-point dog against New Orleans. Really like what's going on there with Houston. How can you not? They have check this out. They are 5-0 straight up and against the spread all time when they have a losing record and take on an NFC South team. How crazy is that? They're also 2-1 straight up, 3-0 against the spread in their last 3. They covered the game last week, 2.5, lost by 2. How about this one too? Dennis Allen, the head coach of the Saints, plays for the first time this year, 1-13 against the spread. When the team he's head coach of comes off a straight up ATS win. How bad is that? Like, that basically is telling you every time his team comes off a straight up ATS, a winning performance, they outplay what people think they're going to do. They come back down to the norm the next week and lose sometimes too. Because that's just against the spread, 1-13 against the spread. Anyway, by the way, New Orleans will host Jacksonville on Thursday Night Football next week. So I'm taking Houston in that one. Let's move on to this one. I'm not taking Baltimore against Tennessee. Baltimore's a 4.5-point favorite. Let's remember that these are teams that played in the postseason not too long ago, back-to-back years. They split in 2019 and 2020. This is the London game. Baltimore favored by 4.5. You want to keep an eye on the injuries for the Ravens, of course. Washington and Minnesota. I do like both of these teams in these early matchups on Sunday. Washington, yeah, they lost 3 straight, but I think what happened is they had a couple of really tough losses, especially the Philly loss. That was just excruciating. They had the short work week. They're at home. They're now just an average team being a touchdown favorite. So there's a lot working against them in that game, and they definitely just were not prepared to take on Chicago in that spot. Now I think they're more prepared to kind of get going again. They've played 2 road games this year, 1-1. The loss against Philly in overtime, and they've covered both of them as a road dog this year. So again, two spots on the road as a road dog, 1-1, covering both. Atlanta has won all 3 games at home this year. Okay, they're 3-0 at home, but they won 2 by 3 total points. So even though they're only given 2.5, you know what? Washington could lose and cover. So it's one of those situations. Normally you go, well, it's 3, you're going to win. I wouldn't look at that in this spot. By the way, Atlanta has dropped 4 straight covers overall. Minnesota, 2.5 over Chicago. And even though Chicago had a win, which was nice, let's keep in mind Herbert, who was looking really good in that one, gets hurt. Nobody knows who the heck's going to be the running back in this one. It could be the rookie. But you're going to go on Chicago winning 2 straight? That's one thing. Especially when the Bears are 3-10-1 against the spread in their last 14 as a home dog. That's pretty bad. Minnesota, meanwhile, has beaten Chicago 4 straight. and won 3 out of the last and covered 3 out of the last 4 versus Chicago. And here's another one that dooms the Bears. They're 1-11, their last 12 against the spread when they take on division opponents, including 0-1 this year, week 1, when they lost to the Bears. And can you believe they were a favorite in that one? I remember talking about that week on one of the other shows. What in the world were they doing as a favorite over the Packers that week? Carolina, Miami. Carolina is 0-5 and also 0-4-1 against the spread. Dolphins have won 4 out of 5 straight up ATS, but you're given 13.5. Same situation with the Bills. They're a 14-point favorite against Brian Daboll and the Giants. He returns to Buffalo. 0-5 against the spread. Their 4th road game in 5 weeks. The Bills have won both games at home this year, straight up ATS, by 86-30. It's not college, but when you're given 14, it's kind of scary in the NFL. But what do you do? I mean, if you're going to take these games, you take Miami and Buffalo, wouldn't you? New England and Vegas. Yes, I know there's a lot of Josh McDaniels detractors out there. I've kind of backed him up in a way, not because I think that he's proven to be a great coach, but I don't think he's as bad as he gets torn apart. I think that there are definitely a lot of bad decisions him like at times, but I also have to take a look at what he's been dealt with. Got to understand. See, what happened in Denver to me is a different lifetime, okay? Because he was also put in charge, and it was just a mess. This is different, and so when you're trying to rebuild a franchise, now look, I don't even know if Josh McDaniels will be there next year because so many people don't want him there, and they just think it's the wrong hire. But when you make a hire like this with a qualified guy, and he is, Josh McDaniels is qualified, you got to give him time. And the thing is he at some point you got to bring in a quarterback. Now I don't know if Aiden O'Connell's that guy. Maybe he is, but I mean, what are you going to do? Derek Carr was on his last legs there, and he wasn't going to last. And then this year, you've gone to Jimmy Garoppolo, so you would think that he would have his quarterback. And maybe he still will. Maybe next year the Raiders will have one of these quarterbacks because there'll be a ton of good quarterbacks coming out of the draft, and they're going to get one of them. So, but as far as this year's team, I don't know how you don't take them this week. I know on the show they took the Patriots, but I don't know how you don't take the Raiders. I mean, I just can't back the Patriots right now. How can you? I mean, they're just dead right now inside. 1-4 straight up ATS on the year. 0-3 straight up ATS as dogs this year. Don't forget the Raiders beat the Patriots last year. They beat New England at home as a 2.5-point favorite. There is one trend, though, that works completely against me taking Las Vegas. Now, I'm taking them. It's not a top pick, but I'm taking them because the only thing that keeps them from not being a top pick is this trend. The Raiders are 0-18 against the spread as a non-division favorite versus an opponent of back-to-back straight-up losses. 0-18. That is critically bad. All right, Detroit's at Tampa. I'm taking Detroit in this one, even though if you were watching our NFL preseason preview show, you know that I took Tampa Bay to win the division, and so far so good. So, but Detroit's just a better team. It's a 3-point spread. That's the reason I'm taking them. They're just a better team. Arizona and the Rams, and this is like one of my only dog plays of the week. I'm not taking them to win the game outright, but Arizona is 18-3 against the spread off back-to-back straight-up ATS losses. That's something I wouldn't normally think. Rams, meanwhile, have dropped both of their home games this year, but it was to San Francisco and Philly. They are 1-0 straight up in ATS as a favorite this year when they beat Indy in overtime. But here's one that works completely against them. 1-11 against the spread when when facing a losing team at home. Actually, let me make sure I get this right. They're 1-11 against the spread when a losing team is playing. Let me make sure I got this right. Here it is. Okay, ready. This is a division trend. That's what this is. So if you go into the Playbook magazine, you'll see, for instance, in the NFL only, you'll see a spot where it's got division. Okay, that's what this is, division data. So this is division data. In division match, when the Rams are playing a division team, they're 1-11 against the spread as a losing team, which they are right now, and they're at home. Okay, and they're taking on a division opponent off back-to-back straight-up losses. All right, so that's what that was. Anyway, I'm taking Arizona in the 7. Philly and the Jets. Philly, 7-point favorite. They've never lost to the Jets. They're 3-0, straight up ATS on the road. The only thing that prevented me from taking the Eagles was the fact that the Jets have covered 9 straight at home when they take on a winning non-AFC East team. And they're 1-0 in that spot this year. That's the only reason that I was like, well, that's 9 straight. And they did it this year once already. So I'll stay away from that. But I would have taken the Eagles otherwise. And one more to go. And that's Dallas and the Chargers on Monday night. I'm taking the Chargers in that one. They get Eckler back, which is huge, huge. They're 11-1 against the spread as NFC dogs of more than 2. Right now they're 2. So just keep that in mind. That'll apply if it goes up to 2, over 2. The Cowboys are 0-2 straight up ATS. Their last 2 road games by a 70-26 margin. They pretty much got blown out by Arizona too. Keep that in mind. And this is a big one for the Chargers. They're coming off the bye. They're getting healthier. They're getting Eckler back, a couple other players, and they're at Kansas City next week. So they can take care of business this week in a huge opportunity to take care of, not opportunity, but huge statement game. Then it's like, how good are we? We're at the Chiefs. The Chiefs are not blowing everybody out. They're vulnerable. Let's do it. Let's show everybody that this is the year that we are the best team in this division. I said in the NFL preseason preview that I thought that this was going to be the year for the Chargers. And the Eckler injury has made it difficult, and Mike Williams too, but they're still in position. They get Eckler back, and this is it. If they're going to be that team, they got to beat the Cowboys and then go into Kansas City and win. I think they can do it, and that's why I'm taking the Chargers in this matchup on Monday night, and that's going to wrap it up. So, again, we're going to do the NFL like this each week. If I have to put in some more college football talk, I will do that based on how much time we have on the college football show. But anyway, it's just a way to take use of all of the information that I get each week and give it back to you guys so you can use it whichever way you want. But this is what you really need to do, and that's order the Playbook magazine. I mean, you cannot... This is just the best thing I've ever had in my life as an NFL college football handicapper. I mean, every team in NFL or college football is in here. Handicapping information up to you-know-what. Throw in the fact that you should be ordering the newsletter each week that comes out, Mark's newsletter. The combination is just something that you can't do without. But I have to take all of the information I get here and share some of it, because this is just some of it that I share with you. Because you can see when I talk to Mark about some of these games, I'll throw in stuff that sound pretty good, right? And some of these, I get some of these really big trends, and where am I getting the trends? I'm getting the trends from his book. But then he's going with the other team, even though I'm getting really good trends from his book with those teams. But he's taking the other team. But he's taking the other team because he's got other trends that he thinks are better. So that's what I'm saying. There are tons of stuff that you can find in here. It's just up to you how to use it to your advantage. So that's going to wrap it up. Please let us know what you think about the video. If there's anything that you want me to do, I can do that for you. If you have any questions or anything like that, please hit the like button. That's also very important. Share the video. That's also key because that's what's going to also let me know whether or not I continue to do this. I mean, if I'm going to get like 15 views a week or something like that on this, it's just I don't have the time. But if enough of these get out there and it's worthwhile, I will definitely do this to get it out there for you guys, and hopefully you can use it to your advantage as best you can. So we'll see you again next week, especially of course on our college football show with Mark Lawrence, which is recorded normally every Thursday. We had to do this on Friday, but I'm going to go ahead and post these shows now, and we'll see you again next week.